Hello and welcome to Ivy Times TV. I'm Sally Turner, joined here today with New York Times best-selling author Richard Miniter to discuss his new book, Leading from Behind, The Reluctant President and the Advisors Who Decide for Him. Richard, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Now, there's been a lot of press recently about Barack Obama's decision to cancel the raid 3 times based on his advisors, in particular Valerie Jarrett. Now, does this mean that he's not in fact leading?
Well, the Obama campaign has made a tremendous deal out of the fact that this was a gutsy call, going into the compound in Abbottabad where bin Laden was hiding, sending in the SEAL teams and killing him. And they presented it as a series of bold measures by the president, literally pounding the table saying, okay, let's do this. Well, when you get into the details, when you talk to the people who are intimately involved in the planning of the operation, it turns out that it's not as the campaign has presented it at all. In fact, it's a series of stops and starts, stalls and sideways movements. At least 3 times in 2011, the planning for the bin Laden raid was stopped. And the word that filtered down to the technical people involved in the planning was that Valerie Jarrett was against it. Valerie Jarrett was concerned about the political ramifications back home. She thought the anti-war left might be upset if the raid was a success, and even more upset if it was a failure and Americans lost their lives or were injured or were captured or if civilians died in the conflict. On the other side of it, she was also concerned about the reaction in the Arab world. She thought there'd be massive protests against America across the Arab world because they'd be angry at the death of bin Laden. So she was weighing political calculations. Other people in the White House, Hillary Clinton, then CIA Director Leon Panetta, General Petraeus, and others were pushing for action. They were more worried about missing the opportunity to get bin Laden, while another set of advisors, Valerie Jarrett, Michelle Obama, Tom Donilon, John Brennan, and so on, they were worried about the political blowback. So it was a balance of politics and warfighting. And the warfighters eventually won. What we learned here about the leadership qualities of President Obama is he's hesitant, he's indecisive, and while he eventually does come to the right decision, at least in the bin Laden case, he comes through a very circuitous route.
Obama recently reportedly said that he doesn't make a decision without first going to Jarrett. Do you think this is necessarily a bad thing?
Well, certainly every president has his advisors, and it's always wise to listen and to learn and to get multiple perspectives. No one is saying the president shouldn't have the benefit of any advisor he wishes. But what's unusual about the relationship between Michelle Obama and Barack Obama and Valerie Jarrett is that Valerie Jarrett is the mentor simultaneously to both of them. So she has enormous leverage over the president. Not only does he rely on her for advice, but he knows that his wife does too. And his wife is obviously a big part of his life. Secondly, every campaign since 1991 of Barack Obama's, Valerie Jarrett played an integral part, often saving it from disaster. And so there's a sense of indebtedness there. Every significant job that Michelle Obama has had since 1991 has been the result of work on by Valerie Jarrett. Many cases working directly under Valerie Jarrett in various capacities. So we've never had an advisor with this much personal leverage over a president and a first lady. This is a unique moment in American history. And the media has just completely ignored it up till now. That's one of the reasons why I wrote this book. I wanted to take a hard look at the Obamas and ask the questions that hadn't been asked before.
Do you think this personal relationship could actually hurt Obama's campaign?
Well, certainly it does push the campaign to take stands that the political veterans would not recommend. For example, Valerie Jarrett pushed both Michelle and Barack Obama to fly to Europe to campaign for the Olympics for Chicago in 2016. Of course, Chicago lost on the first round of balloting, and the president and the first lady were handed a humiliating defeat. So sometimes she can lead them astray as well, lead them into things that are of personal interest to her. Obviously, she would have played a big role in the Olympics in 2016. After she leaves the White House, Valerie Jarrett was looking for a second or a third act, and the Olympics would have been a good one. So she put her personal needs ahead of the president's, and that's happening on the campaign as well, I'm sure.
And you discuss in the book the people close to Obama in moulding him being women. What do you think that says about him? You know,
it's amazing a little bit about American psychology that I had not anticipated, that some people are taking that as a criticism. You know, I think there's nothing wrong with strong, confident, intelligent, progressive-minded women. In fact, isn't that what everyone wants? However, the idea that it's an observation, not a criticism, that he relies uniquely on strong women to get things done. And it might be something that emerges from his childhood experiences, where he's raised essentially by a single mother who moved around a lot, and she was the one piece of stability in his life. But certainly he does relate well to Michelle Obama, to Valerie Jarrett, who's been very influential in his career, to Nancy Pelosi, who was a real driver of legislative success in the first 2 years of the Obama administration. She was the House Speaker. And then, of course, to Hillary Clinton. And that's an extraordinary relationship, where they were bitter enemies in 2008, fighting for the Democratic nomination for presidency. And Hillary loses, gets brought into the cabinet just to unify the Democratic Party after a historic victory by President Obama, and wins him over, woos him in a series of breakfast meetings, eventually becoming the only cabinet member with a standing meeting with the president every week. And it's a Thursday morning breakfast usually. And this is something where she, just through hard work and being able to read him, I mean, Hillary has great experience in dealing with difficult men, and has learned how to manage him, and he has come to rely on her. So I think that's interesting. That's something we haven't seen in presidents before, a reliance on strong-minded, intelligent women. I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's a good thing, but it's just a different thing. It's interesting. It signals part of what's different about Barack Obama.
Do you think this reliance comes from perhaps a fear from him to make a decision? Do you believe he could make a decision on his own?
That's a great question. I think he's more afraid of making a mistake than missing an opportunity. Mm-hmm. There is a deep insecurity there, combined with a deep intelligence. And intelligence has a way of fueling insecurity and accelerating it, doesn't it? But also I think that he relates better with strong women because they're able to read the ever-shifting moods and the complex moods. Sometimes they can read him better than he can read himself, and he comes to value that.
And finally, looking forward to November, do you have a prediction about what's going to happen, or where do you think Obama will go from here?
Well, it's too soon to say. I mean, the polls are neck and neck, and I think this is going to be a very close election. And it's probably going to be the most consequential election in a generation, because just like 1980, it's a fundamental choice in American politics. Do we continue down the road we have been for more than 70 years with the New Deal, the Great Society, large government spending, and so on? Or do we change course and reduce the national debt, save the dollar as the global currency, and restore jobs and so on? It's a big change either way, and I have no idea how it's going to turn out.
Essentially, your book is about leadership. If you had to pick one quality in a good leader, what would that be?
I would say decisiveness. At the end of the day, I mean, the leader has to make decisions in real time. The ability to decide, always with incomplete information, because no one but God knows everything, at least at the right moment. But the ability to decide, to make good decisions based on clear analysis that are right for more people than they're wrong for. That balancing act and that decisive quality is important. And the fact that so many of Obama's staffers complain about a kind of paralysis where memos and decisions will go to his desk and linger there for weeks and months, even relatively minor decisions, an inability to say yes or no to even very minor things. It's very frustrating in a president or in any leader.
Do you think this indecisiveness will be his kryptonite going into November?
I think the more people get a close look at Obama's leadership style, the more they will have real questions about his fitness for office.
All right, well, thank you, Richard. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you.
I'm Sally Turner for IB Times TV.